This is Paul, wanted to digital. Welcome to Hard Talk. Hard Talk today will feature my good brethren as my special guest speaker, Dr. David Mohammed. And we'll do this interview via telephone. And of course, my good brother is the main player, if I should say, behind the Kwame Tourist Center out there in the Success Laventil Village in Port of Spain. And we've had a double celebration and observation African Liberation Day 2024 and the sixth anniversary of the opening of the Kwame Tourist Center. Good afternoon, Brother David. Assalamu alaikum.
Good afternoon, Brother David McIntyre, known as the Daddy Mac, and good afternoon also to all of your listeners and to the entire community.
Yes, David, I know we had a double celebration, a double celebration and observation, African Liberation Day, and the
Yes.
sixth anniversary of the opening of the Kwame Tourist Center. Can you just give us, I know the focus, put the focal point on family, parenting, taking responsibility for our actions, redirecting blame level outside to problem solving, efforts within, met-
Yes.
mentorship of the youth, etc., etc., etc. Can you give us a recap or a review of how things went on Saturday?
Hmm. Well, it was a fantastic day.
Mhm.
We'd like to send out special thanks to all of those who helped make it a great success. We had a filled auditorium,
Mm.
and as is usually the case, there were we had some presenters who were not scheduled to be on, but we just had to fit in. But basically, we heard from Brother Alan Ferguson, president of the Scrap Iron Dealers Association. He spoke on justice and crime and us as a community pulling together to eradicate from within criminal elements. We heard from, of course, one of our main guests, the Speaker of the House of the Tobago House of Assembly, or the presiding officer, Sister Abby Taylor.
Yeah.
She was fantastic, very inspirational, young, dynamic Black woman. We heard from President of the Caribbean Pan-African Association, Felipe Noguera, who's no stranger to local media. He actually hosted the event when President Obama came to Trinidad.
Yeah.
That would have been 12 years ago. One of the more controversial presentations was from activist and businessman Dane Francois. Now, of course, Dane Francois for many years has been on the media as well, but Dane Francois was raising the issue of, and it's an issue that, to be honest, has invoked a lot of anger in a lot of people. We would have touched on it briefly, but the issue of the African Bank that is now all over the Caribbean, the AfriExim Bank it's called, where in these ongoing efforts to create stronger ties between Africa and the Caribbean, an African bank is being established across the Caribbean. And from what we understand, this African bank is in every country in the English-speaking Caribbean except two. These two countries are Jamaica and Trinidad and Tobago. And what is of particular concern about this is, of course, our Prime Minister recently visited Ghana, was a guest of a king out there, would have met the president of Ghana. And in his speech out there in Ghana, he spoke about the bank. And he spoke about how initiatives like this are needed to strengthen ties between Africa and the Caribbean. But of course, it wasn't mentioned that Trinidad and Tobago is one of the only countries that are not welcome in the bank. So that looks like a huge paradox there. But on further investigation, it is understood, and this, of course, is not confirmed, but this is the information reaching us, that there's one particular individual within government who is finding reasons to place impediments against the African Bank. So even though the Prime Minister wants it, from what we understand, one other cabinet member with power, who's a minister over finances, I'm not going to name who it is, that this other government minister has been putting up impediments against it. And again, from the information reaching us, is that this is to make way for the benefits to fall on a local bank, which is not an African bank, but has been referred to by some as a Syrian bank. So this local bank has connected with the headquarters of the African bank, which is in Barbados. Now, I mean, just look at this bigger picture, that an African bank has already been endorsed by the government of Trinidad and Tobago. It's already been identified as something that's needed, but yet still, there are those inside the government who are trying to prevent it. And we understand that the local bank, the non-African bank, has usurped the benefits that the African bank should be reaping by going straight through Barbados. And of course, they're getting assistance. So that presentation was done by Dane Francois, very powerful. He also had a petition that's being filled out to take to the Prime Minister to, basically give him moral support in resisting those forces inside who are resisting his wishes in the establishment of this bank. And then we had some artists and entertainers. We had Akinola Senin, who did the pan. We had Prince Naftali, one of the young dancehall artists who just shares pure conscious lyrics. We had the former head of all mansions of Rastafari, Brother Clyde Noel. He's also the founder of the 12 Tribes of Israel movement in Trinidad. We were blessed for him to grace us with his presence. And of course, Sister Roxanne Mohammed, Brother Brent Mohammed, Brother Lincoln X, God X. So it was a full day. It actually went on for just over 4 hours, when the designated time slot was 3 hours. But, our people remained fixated. And of course, Brother Dennis Mohammed from Guyana. Dennis Mohammed spoke the next day as well. And he came to Trinidad with a family of 10 guests from Guyana. So it was really beautiful, really beautiful.
I know. Well, I know we had that on Saturday, and prior to that, you also had a special feature under the theme "Sign of the End of Times and the New World Order." Now we've had an international decade designated to the people of African descent from 2015 to 2024. Now, tell me, how challenging it is now to inspire a sense of purpose after these sort of observations and celebrations and all of that. How effective you think, if you should put it under that theme, the international decade designated to people of African descent? Are we going forward? Are we achieving anything? I mean, what you just said there with impediments, I think that's an achievement especially for Trinidad and Tobago. But in general, I've always wanted to ask you that. What is the feeling like from your perspective about African people or Africanism, seeing that after 2024, that will be the end of that decade? It's been a decade, and to me, things weren't looking too good at all during that decade for African people of African descent.
Well, it's interesting how the sequence of these events outlay, because if we recall,
Mm-hmm.
2011 was a year for people of African descent, United Nations year
Mm-hmm.
for people of African descent, and I mean, 2011 was a crisis year in Trinidad for
Yes.
people of African descent,
Mm-hmm.
as the character and tone of the state of emergency that we had
Mm-hmm.
seemed to have overtones of exclusively targeting young African males.
Yeah.
But it was interesting that just 3-4 years later, the United Nations took the decision to, after having a single year, to proceed to have an entire decade. And I think that at the time when the decade was declared, many of us would have probably had expectations of a lot more happening.
Mm-hmm.
I think 2021 was a, was at least what looked like it would have been a turning point,
Mm-hmm.
because in 2021, just past the halfway mark in the decade, we had the first ever Africa CARICOM Heads of Government Summit.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the first time ever in history that heads of government from African countries met in conference with heads of government of Caribbean countries,
Yeah.
to put a number of issues on the table, once again, to foster closer relations. Now, this, we should make clear, was online. Okay, it was virtual,
Yeah.
because this would have been in the height of the pandemic.
Yes.
So it was September the 7th, 2021. And there was an agreement to a number of things. One was direct flights between Africa and the Caribbean, dual citizenship between people of African descent in the Caribbean and countries in the mother continent. There was the idea of free trade and the removal of tariffs or trade restrictions. And I mean, the main or a main part of it for me was that all of the heads agreed that moving forward, September the 7th would be Africa CARICOM Day. Now, we, the Black Agenda Project Organization, have pledged every year to hold an acknowledgement for Africa CARICOM Day, but we had September the 7th, 2022, and September the 7th, 2023, and September the 7th, 2024 is coming up, but we have not had any kind of, at least that we know of, any kind of follow-up to this great monumentous historic occasion. And again, it makes me concerned a bit about how we tend to revolve our hopes around fancy declarations and statements and special days and occasions and celebrations and acknowledgements without the real backup substance. It's like with the bank. We as a community cannot be so impressed by bright colors and statements, cutting ribbons and turning swords and all of these ceremonial moments that we can isolate and make a news item out of. But when it comes to the actual struggle within itself, day to day, where the cameras are not there, where the news media is not there, when attention is not being paid, but we have to carry out our day-to-day operations, we're concerned that there's neglect and negligence at those times and during those moments. So this is why we have to really remain focused on what we're about, in spite of whoever else is doing whatever else. And let me just take the opportunity, Brother David, to tell you that this Sunday coming, which is June the 2nd, I think it is.
Yes, it is.
Is that correct? Right. Yeah, this Sunday coming, we're doing a part 2 to Saturday, and the theme, the topic of my lecture on Sunday is how to make a community rich out of poor individuals. Now think of the term, right? How to make a rich community out of poor individuals. I'll say it one more time. How to make a
community
how to make a rich community out of poor individuals. Now, think of that statement, right? And then I'm going to reverse 2 words and then ask you to think again on it. I'm just going to reverse 2 words. So the statement is how to make a community rich out of poor individuals. And I'm going to reverse the words community and rich. And then repeat the statement saying how to make a rich community out of poor individuals. I see the second one. That part has already been done. Because there are communities that have been made rich of poor individuals. But the thing is, we are the poor individuals. And the rich community has been other communities. But we want to discuss how to make our own community rich in spite of the fact that all of us are poor. And it's a very thought-provoking presentation.
I know.
On an AM back at the Mc Intyre Center.
Okay. I know you've been working in the trenches. You've been, putting out a lot of mental energy, especially in those trenches. And when you look and listen to news, mainstream news, media, and the social media, it seems as though so much more needs to be done via methods of approach. I think that's what you're saying could be one of the methods of approach. So I guess on that day, you will elaborate on method of approach because there are
Absolutely.
some, especially where parents are concerned. The blind can see that there are some parents who have reached a stage where they have no control over some of the children. We see it happening in schools. We've seen it happening on the streets and all these kind of places where you would observe that happening. That turnaround, that is a monumental effort needed to make a turnaround like that. You think parents are on board in trying to restructure their responsibilities?
Definitely many parents are. But at the same time, many parents are not. And the reasons that they are not is due to, the way we see it, a multitude of complex frustrations. Because you have a number of factors that are contributing towards poor parenting, absentee fathers, dysfunctional families, and these attitudes being carried down intergenerationally to younger parents or individuals who become parents as teenagers who are even less prepared than their parents were to manage them. And it becomes such a crisis situation that is almost approaching becoming a new normal. So one of the issues surrounding this is the kind of shift away from tradition that we're seeing.
Yeah.
So in the news today, for example, the Pope of Rome forced an apology from the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church had to apologize today for some statements that were made by the Pope. Did you hear about that?
No, this is news to me.
Well, it was so interesting, and it was in its own way kind of unusual, because the Pope, believe it or not, said, it was in the news today, I think he said it yesterday, and had to apologize swiftly, that there are too many homosexual men trying to become priests. No.
Oh, Lord.
This is the Pope saying this. And the thing is, the reason that he was, the reason that the Church, the Catholic Church, from the Vatican, issued a formal apology worldwide is not just because of the sentiments of the Pope or what the Pope said, but also because of a particular derogatory term that he used in Italian, which in English translated as, you know, one of those derogatory terms that were used to describe homosexuals that you don't hear being used at all anymore.
Yes.
Right. So apparently the Pope used such a word, but in Italian, not in English.
Right.
And then he was, you know, he apologized, the Church apologized. Now, I mean, I don't believe that the Pope is what we would describe as homophobic or hating of anyone or anything like that. But I believe his views did represent a certain concern about a shift away from tradition. Because globally, or at least in Western culture, so-called Western culture, you're seeing a decrease in the number of marriages, an increase in the number of divorces, an increase in the amount of cohabitations or domestic partnerships without being married, more and more single-parent households, lone person households, single-parent families, and same-sex relationships as a basis for new family structures adopting children. And then you have governments who are introducing social policy to facilitate many of these changes that move away from the traditional nuclear family. So, for example, in many Western societies now, laws are being passed to give, for example, domestic partnerships and even same-sex couples similar rights of inheritance, health and care, etc., to non-married couples as they would to married couples. Also, the law is recognizing legal legitimacy of civil partnerships in the same way that it would have done historically marriages. So all of this is contributing towards decrease in marriage, rise in divorce, increase in domestic partnerships. Further to that, you have what is called secularization, or the declining influence of religious instruction and direction on family life. And with secularization taking place, you have a decline in stigmas attached. For example, when we were going to school, especially in the teaching profession, it would be frowned upon, for example, for a school teacher to be pregnant who's female without being married.
Yes.
Or even for women, I mean, we even heard about in the early days, like if a female school teacher were to become pregnant and she's not married, she'll be fired. And you also have the stigma that used to be attached to women over the age of 35 who were not yet married either. So a lot of these are a reflection of religious values, but secularization is taking place, religious influence is declining, government policies are beginning to accommodate these shifts away from tradition. And as a result of that, both directly and indirectly, you see a decline in the ability of the family to properly socialize as young individuals.
Yes.
Hence, the gangs are taking over. Entertainment is taking over. Video games, movies, role models on a screen are taking over. And our children are being raised by all of these external influences outside of the family, the religious organization, and the school. And with social media and its broad impact now, the heaviest influence on our children is not coming from the family, the school, or the religious organization anymore. And for some, and again, in Western societies, you have these dialectic political views. So you either have a conservative view or a liberal view. The liberal view will say, freedom of choice is important. Abortions can be allowed.
Yeah.
If someone wants to shack up or live with someone of the same sex, it's okay. Those are liberal views. And then conservative views are those that would say, no, we need to preserve traditional values. We need to keep things or return things back to how they were. But in our society of complete and total backward political ideas, you don't even know who's liberal or who's conservative. It's all just one big hodgepodge of who thief more or who thief less. So we don't even get to discuss, from a nationalistic point of view, the kind of harm or damage that might be caused as a result of these shifts in policies. And that state of political confusion is also contributing towards the demise of the social fabric of society.
But that said, that takes away even more from the parents or guardians, or even the term "it takes a village to raise a child." That makes things even more difficult, because to me, like, the liberal people are more prominent in their statements and their actions and all of that, that sort of influence the younger folk. It's difficult to convince them. You'll have to have a real rein. You have to hold a serious rein on the youths if you are to model any kind of difference in going forward in their young lives. So much different influences. I think it's very difficult. I look at a couple of youths in my area, some little fellas who I look at all the time, and I try to talk with them in a particular kind of way all the time. And even my two little grandsons, my daughter, she tries very hard to keep them occupied as boys, nurturing them into being, well-behaved and well-disciplined and brilliant young men. Outside of that now, with these kind of influences of the people who are, like you said, from the rich communities, or let's look at community in the context of controlling of power and stuff. I think they make it even more difficult by enhancing the influences. So question is, where method of approach is, that can be a Herculean task. And I know you are taking it day to day, step by step, and all of that. But results, how are we to monitor results?
Well, there's one huge irony of this discussion, and that is because one of the main things that we are fighting against is racism, right?
Yeah.
Racism, sexism, social class discrimination.
Yeah.
All of this is part of the struggle. But here, what's really weird about this, the fact that it's normally the conservative groups that would come across as being racist and sexist and classist that are the ones who are trying to promote traditional values.
Yes, yes.
You know?
Yes.
And it's the ones who we may gravitate towards finding likable, you know, like our typical Joe Biden or, you know, maybe Obama or, you know, like how Bill Clinton was liked among the Black community.
Yes.
It's politicians like that who we may find more likable that will go for the more liberal, you know, supporting of all of these, you know, values that we may be against.
Yeah.
And it's really peculiar. It's really odd. And I believe from that point of view, from that perspective, the solutions to these issues all lie within our communities. It goes back to the idea behind this theme that we want to share on Sunday, coming about making a rich community out of poor individuals. We have so much power as isolated communities that if we tap in to all of the individual strengths from the occupations, from the professions, from the certificates, the skills, the talents, the abilities that we have in our communities, then, you know, we are able to create our own solutions to our own problems.
I know. Well, I know I have you for limited time, David. My big question to pull down the curtains. I know we must continue this, and I have to make this a sort of series because it's about time we have more outreach. And speaking of outreach, the Kwame Tourist Center. Is there any inkling of a thought of having a southern base?
You know, we have been asked that a few times, well, to be honest.
Yeah.
Right? And what I would say to that would be, I think a greater goal for us, a greater mission for us might not be to actually
have a physical place. Oh boy.
Yeah. A new generation of every young persons to organize themselves, then that would really be a solution to that concern. That would really be an achievement of that goal.
I needed to repeat that because you were breaking up. You know, the system sort of broke.
Oh,
yes.
Right. Yeah, I'm sorry. A call was coming in on the other line.
Okay.
So what would be even better than us building a similar center in South would be for us to inspire others, in particular, a new young generation to organize themselves, get themselves together, pool their resources, and build a similar center.
Good.
And that way, I think if we can do that, that would be a major achievement. And literally, honestly, that's what we're trying to do in our outreach to the youth, to the young people. This is a major objective, that we can inspire the interest in creating this kind of change, doing this kind of work for others and with others.
I hear you so much. Before you go, could you repeat what's happening on Sunday?
Right. So on Sunday morning at 11 o'clock at the Kwame Touré Center, we're having a follow-up lecture, which is entitled How to Make a Rich Community Out of Poor Individuals. And it is a detailed social science on a method that all of us can employ
Yeah.
It's not a pipe dream. It's not a theory. It's not something that has not already been done. It's been tested. It's been proven. And, we believe that once that ideology spreads, that we can see the same kind of success.
Okay. Could you give me a time as to when it starts?
Right. So that's 11 o'clock,
Mhm.
Sunday morning,
Yeah.
11 o'clock. That is June
That's the
the
second.
2nd,
Yeah.
I think, Sunday. Yeah. So we look forward, of course, to seeing our people out.
Okay. Okay. I want to thank you so very much for sharing with me. And like I said, I'm going to ask you again to to come
Yes.
back to my what I call a Trinity. That's the name of my Tuesday program. And
Uh,
today I had a theme as Black Liberation. So we stream
mm,
live too. Even
mm.
though I'm doing it on the phone, we stream live on the YouTube and Facebook. So I want to thank you for
Oh,
coming on and sharing the word. I hope that it reaches where you would like it to reach. And I too will be always, like we say, have your back. I'll be an
oh,
extensive voice or an extended voice of your efforts and the people who are behind you trying to make this thing work.
mm. Well, thank you so much once again, Brother David. And it was a pleasure to have been part of this program.
Okay. Thank you so much, David.
Thank you, sir. All the best.
Same to you. Inshallah.
Yes, sir, inshallah.
That was my good brother, Dr. David Mohammed, a man who I have really big respect for. On my program today, Hard Talk, Trinity, with a theme, Black Liberation. And I hope that my people will have listened intently. I want to say hi to Elizabeth Bain. And Elizabeth, someone is saying hi to you. And they're saying hi, Bain. So I want to thank the people who were locked on. I hope that you heard. David is having another session on the second. That's this Sunday at the Kwame Tourist Center in Success Village. That's opposite the Success Village Secondary School there, just off the Eastern Main Road. And it starts at 11 a.m. So join me next Tuesday when I have another edition of Hard Talk Trinity right here at